Just when you think the Unwanted Undead Adventure couldn't get any better, here comes episode 9 to say, oh, we can. And maybe a lot of my enjoyment comes down to the fact that an episode like this really reminds me of how I play video games, and the amount of joy I have seeing Rent go off the path that he's supposed to go down, which is, there's the main story, what happened with him trying to evolve, and there's this kidnapping plotline, but I'm the type of guy when playing a video game, I want to get a decent amount into the main story, like get my bearings, figure out where shit's going, and then I just want to do every available side quest, or at least the ones that are interesting. If it's a generic fetch quest, I don't really care. You need to have like a cool story attached to said fetch quest to make it worth it. Last week really was a different style of episode. It said, hey, maybe this is a one-off thing, but we could also be in a situation where if this was a 2-core, the next 8 or 9 episodes could be episodic questing adventures. And for me, that stuff's fun because this is a world bigger than just Rent's personal story. People are gonna announce on the guild boards like, hey, here's my quest, I need this done because I need someone to be saved, or, my life's gonna be ruined. Situation that started off as just clear a cellar because there's some rats, turned into we recruited a familiar because we're technically part vampire, and now we have the most adorable pet a part of our party, but now we're in this situation of a poisonous swamp where wyverns could jump us, a big turtle-like monster tried to eat us, and now we're in contact with a character that maybe could be an ally going forward, a one-off character, I don't know. But this is what a lot of gamers love doing, going for these side quests, because most of the time the side quests are more interesting than the main quest, and that's kind of what it feels like we're at now. Maybe that's just me, but I absolutely love this episode. I have a full live reaction to episode 9 of the Unwanted Undead Adventurer over on my Patreon. If you want to see my full and good thoughts, they're over there if you're interested. I liked everything about this episode. I enjoyed last week. I loved how different it was. I liked the twist that, not only was the kidnappers that we were dealing with in that episode different than the kidnappers in the situation we were looking for, the whole illusion and everything was just really, really clever. This episode, we go where I'm like, okay, it's kind of like an orphanage-like area. Here's this little girl who's seemingly taking care of all the other kids. The nun, the woman who should be taking care of everyone, pretty much bedridden. Not gonna die anytime soon, but, we can see her deteriorating. We need to go find a very poisonous, very rare flower, and most people wouldn't be able to do so. It's no wonder it's a goddamn fortune, probably a year's income for a lot of people, because the place that Rent's currently traveling through, you would be poisoned as soon as you walked in there, not even adding in the giant beast or the fish trying to eat you. I don't blame people for charging an arm and a leg, given how hard it probably is to go get those flowers. And if that elf who approaches us is like the guardian of those flowers, if he's very picky about who gets them, it's probably even harder to get. I don't know the direction they're gonna go with that, because originally he's like, oh, it's probably okay if I pick an extra couple, which I'm basically saying, hell, pick the whole goddamn field there. I mean, you're not gonna be able to get a lot of these, so go ahead and do it. Now I'm kind of thinking he might only be able to pick the one. Maybe it's kind of like a situation where you have to be like, hey, what do you need the flower for, or something like that, or maybe it's a boss fight. I don't know. Either way, I'm excited to see what they do, but I liked what they did because there's so many little moments that I'm just like, this is so precious or badass, or I'm like, it kind of feels like a video game, and I love that. I mean, let's talk about the familiar. He goes down into the cellar, and there's a handful of rats. And I'm thinking to myself, man, rats would probably actually be a little bit of a bitch to deal with, because in video games, you kind of auto-lock on things, but those things are gonna scurry around, they're a little fast. He hits it one time, because after it bites on his hand, and we got a familiar. He puts a cloak or a cape around this fool. He is the most adorable cinnamon roll, who might be a little shit. He does seem like he has an attitude problem. He thinks Rent is basically his servant, and he just uses Rent's abilities without asking, but oh my lord, him getting stuffed from dinner, or there's something about him, and it opens up a new possibility. Rent being, part vampire right now, can make familiars, and it gets you excited because while you don't expect to see any more this season, the idea of the story is like, oh, if he can make familiars, there's a lot of different animals that would be worthy of having as familiars. Maybe have a wolf or some sort of dog, canine-like familiar for maybe, a little bit of combat so it can help you, but also, a good boy's always welcome to a party. Maybe get a flying bird of some sort as like a scouting, familiar. Or maybe we just let Ratatouille be the only familiar you get And either way, we're winning at this point in time. But the thing that's actually really surprising is, as much as I've loved this show from pretty much episode 1, episode 2 is where I really found my groove with this show, but I enjoyed it from episode 1. I wouldn't have said this is anywhere close to being a great produced show. It was fine for the most part in the first 6 episodes or so. There's elements that were decent, but you're not going to say it has the best animation or art direction. I enjoyed looking at it, but I understood when people criticized it. Surprisingly, the second half of this season so far is like magnitudes better than the first half, which is interesting because maybe it was intentional because they knew there was going to be certain fights and certain things they needed to prioritize. But often with anime, the beginning and maybe the very end are the best produced, and everything else can kind of be a hit or a miss. Where the Unwanted Undead Adventurer said, nah, we're just going to get better in the second half. And I thank them for it, because we fight basically a giant turtle-like beast, which was really well produced. Kind of a little freaky because it seemed like his weapons and everything weren't doing anything. Apparently the weakness was divinity, as thanks to our little pal who scurried off and kind of borrowed our powers, or solar powers, without asking. And honestly, the fight was really cool. I thought we were going to have to toss him over the cliff or something. No, instead we had to use divinity and we slice its head clean off. I don't know, there's something about the kind of side questing feel of the past couple of episodes and how they're very distinct. It actually feels like if you were in an RPG picking up some quests, there'd be a lot thrown at you, and you would pick and choose the most interesting ones. And based on last week, based on what he's doing here, these are the types of quests I would do, because even though technically the one we're doing is a fetch quest, the story behind it is interesting and you want to help them, you feel like they deserve it, and we're going to a cool location that only an undead, unwanted adventurer would be able to do. And goddamn, it's just cool to follow. The funniest thing is I have to imagine there's someone on the staff of this show who just believes in Lorraine's supremacy. Because every time she's on screen, now granted, her character design, it points a focus in a certain area, but the amount of times they start a shot at chest level to pan up, I thank them for it. But I see what they're doing. In Lorraine's supremacy do we believe in, but either way, there's a lot of little moments. The fact that he even complains about, he has to blend in, make it seem like he does need rest, but he doesn't need rest, and it kind of becomes boring. But the fact that he's actually able to eat a decent meal now, if you sprinkle in a little bit of blood, I guess the stew can taste pretty normal, all things considered. And obviously we see our girl troll the other one being like, oh yeah, I put my blood in it. Don't worry, only in his. Like, she knows what she's doing with those backhanded remarks, and I love her for it. But let me know what you thought, because for me, this was a more enjoyable episode than last week. I really enjoyed last week, but this just it found its side quest groove is how I'd put it. And we have a familiar. What more can you ask for? Let me know your feelings down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new around here. Of course, ring that bell. And like I mentioned, we have a full live reaction over on my Patreon. And hey, while you're over there, I'll also give you a video shout out. So today we got Jaren Ubonks, Old School IDM, Jack Yakumo, Chaotic Viewer, and Justin Barnard. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care and have a good one.